Back now with our News Channel 5 political analyst, Brian Crowley and Isadora Rangel, Miami Herald Editorial Board. I thank you both for being with us. Let's talk a little bit more before we jump to legislative issues coming up in 2024. The Biden factor, especially as it pertains to Florida. None of this happens in a vacuum. We've got the Republican race, got a lot of things swirling around the president, questions about age and popularity and whether he's the right Democrat, all that and much, much more. Isadora?
Yeah, there was a poll that was recently released, not in Florida, but I believe Georgia and Michigan, that showed Donald Trump actually leading Biden in those states. Those are two states that Biden won by narrow margins in 2020. I think, I was talking to a Democrat myself over the weekend. Somebody was a staunch Democrat, and she told me, I wish Biden was not running. I think that's the sentiment you hear, even from people who might never vote for Donald Trump. But the issue, I think, for Democrats is, are those people going to stay home if Biden is not able to bounce back? I think that's a big question for Democrats. I think they're starting to panic a little.
Brian, your thoughts?
Yeah,
why that visceral reaction with the president?
Yeah, I think she's absolutely right. There is this danger that Democrats face, that some Democrats will just decide to stay home, which if that happens, Biden's going to be in a lot of trouble. Part of the problem is his own image. There are Democrats I've spoken to who are concerned that they believe he's not cognitively all there. They watch him as he walks up to a podium, and he kind of looks like he looks like he's an old guy walking podium. Now he has leg and back issues, and that's why he walks so slow and carefully. But they see something diminishing there. And, obviously that plays well for the Republicans. But the very fact that you even have any Democrats thinking that that's a possibility. And
the schism with the
Israeli-Hamas war.
Within the Democratic Party
Within
ranks,
the Democratic Party, that's a big issue. You may wind up with segments on both sides staying home from the election. And we don't know how that's going to play out in the months to come. I know the Biden administration has been counting a lot on the economy. They finally, I think, have decided to drop the term Bidenomics. That wasn't working. But until we know what the gas prices and grocery prices are going to be in October 2024, what the economy is doing right now doesn't matter.
We have our own issues in Florida relating to the economy. Homeowners insurance doesn't go a day where I don't hear from a viewer about that, understandably. Isadora, affordable housing and the like. We do have a huge Florida legislative session coming up. Talk about that. Tee that up for our viewers. What are you expecting? Talk about big issues as we look to the 2024 session in Tallahassee. Isadora?
Yeah. I don't think I need to explain the issue with property insurance to your viewers. I'm sure a good fraction of them have seen their premiums sometimes double. It's happened to people in my circle. But that's the big question. Will lawmakers do something about it? In his proposed budget, Governor DeSantis has proposed tax breaks for 1 year to help homeowners. Republicans have also invested a lot in a program that helps people do home hardening improvements. But that's still the big elephant in the room for me, is, are they going to do something substantive? About 2 years ago, they had a special session where they passed legislation to lower litigation costs for insurance companies. But the latest analyses are showing that that's not really going to make a dent in premiums. We have the higher cost of dealing with hurricanes and other natural disasters. I live in Fort Lauderdale. Just months ago, we had massive flooding here. Even the airport was flooded, right? And so will lawmakers take a significant look at property insurance again? I am not sure. I think that's going to be the big question I think regular Floridians are waiting for an answer from the state. And it needs to be more than, I think, just these incremental improvements, such as helping them harden their homes, which are essential, but they don't really answer. They're just one part of the equation, I think.
Briefly, before we turn to Brian, culture war issues, will they be front and center or not so much this session? What are you anticipating, you and your reporter side team?
Well, that is one thing I wanted to bring up about DeSantis. Is that he had a CNN town hall this week, and he barely mentioned woke. He thought at one point that he could rise in the Republican primary because of his attacks on what he describes as woke culture issues. And now that's not really paying off for him. And the question is, will the legislature continue to go down that road? There is a bill that has already been filed dealing with gender pronouns for local governments and state government agencies as well as contractors. It's unclear whether that bill is going to pass. Obviously, session doesn't start until January, but I'm really curious to see if they're going to ease on that issue of cultural wars and focus on the pocketbook issues that people really care about. Talking about drag queens seems to me a bit outdated at this point. I think the Republican Party needs to move on from that.
Brian, your takes, nobody more expert than you, all your years covering the beat in Tallahassee, and talk about what you anticipate, what you're looking toward and pointing toward as we look at the legislative session.
Well, I agree with Isadora. Homeowners insurance and auto insurance are going to become two big issues in Tallahassee. They kind of wish it would go away, but look, even legislators, their staff, the folks who work in Tallahassee, they're watching their homeowners insurance go up too. And they really haven't figured out a concrete way of dealing with it. And I think, more and more people are getting their new premiums in the weeks and months ahead. And they're seeing these huge increases. And I think by the time the legislature's in session in January, they're going to start feeling some real pressure on that issue.
Brian, what does the next few years look like if Ron DeSantis does not win his bid for the presidency, for the nomination? What would the next few years look like with him as governor?
Well, there was already speculation last week that he might be preparing himself for 2028.
1 year at a time.
Depending on how badly if he loses, depending how badly he loses, that will have an impact on his future. And it would be interesting to see whether or not the legislature, which has been remarkably acquiescent to anything the governor wants. I've never seen anything like this in all my years of watching Florida governors, whether or not they'll still be as easy to push around as they've been the last 5 years for the governor.
Isadora, last a little bit under a minute in this segment. You want to tackle that one? What's the future look like if he doesn't march to the White House?
That is the big question. That is the one issue other than property insurance that we'll be watching is how much power will Ron DeSantis retain? Let's remember that the legislative session is happening during the Iowa caucus, right? This is an early session that begins in January. So will DeSantis lose his power? He still has the power of the veto. But so did previous governors. Rick Scott did not get nearly as much done in the legislature as Ron DeSantis did. So I want to see, will Republicans look at Ron DeSantis and say, this is a losing guy, we're done with you, we're going to do as what we want, or are they still going to continue to comply? Because DeSantis has exerted power, not only because he's running for president, but what you hear a lot is that he uses a lot of fear tactics as well. And I think he'll continue to use that. He's not somebody who's known for playing around when he wants to get things done.
Isadora, thank you. And Brian, and we'll have your final thoughts from both of you on the other side of the break. Appreciate it from both of you.